Well, I'm excited to be here today for many, many reasons, but most of all, I'm just glad to be here with you, and that is wonderful for me. But I want to start out with a couple of things that we did last week, just to touch bases with you, and I think it's so important. Last week, I challenged myself, I encouraged you and challenged you to make some connections. How did our connections go? Did they go okay? You may have called on the phone. You may have gone and visited people. You may have talked to them face to face. You might have even gone on Facebook. Facebook is okay. So if you have Facebook, do Facebook. I mentioned last week that I do FaceTime with Gemma back in Atlanta. And that is so cool. You should try it. It's really neat to do that. But this is so important. Every time I think about this, it's becoming more and more important that we do make those connections. And the connections, you can call it whatever word that you want, fellowship, whatever it may be. I don't know what it is that I've let so many years go by and not really taken it the way that God gave it. And I was convicted, and I've mentioned this to a lot of you. I was convicted that, Greg, take notice. Don't let this stuff go by. Don't just get so busy in what you're doing that you don't deal with this. And I committed to him, and he convicted me. And I said, okay, I will do it. I will do it. And this week has been a great week for me in dealing with connections. And so I've been around talking with people, and you know, it's been a shameful thing for me that it's been so long. And God is saying, don't let that time stretch by without making those connections that we have with each other. And so I wanted to ask you, did it go okay with you? Connections?
Yes.
It went wonderful for me, so I hope it went to you too. Would you like to be challenged again? It's great. I tried calling somebody last night, and I didn't get a hold of him, but I tried calling somebody last night. Lois and I have kind of decided that we're going to invite people over for dinner. And that's a revelation to me, that you can have somebody over for dinner. And that's really good. And we're gonna do that. So if you get a phone call one of these days to come over for dinner, I hope you accept, because we'd love to have you, and we're gonna do it. But yet the trouble is, though, that some of you don't like fish. So we'll try to do whatever we can do to make that work. But so Lois and I are salmon lovers, so we want to share with you how good salmon is. So, yeah. So, but anyway, I'm glad, and I would challenge us to just keep going with it. I think God has so much for us that we can bless each other, and that fellowship can be strong, more strong. And I'm just constantly impressed with that verse in 1 John that says, if you walk in the light as I am in the light, then you'll have fellowship with me. And then the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all sin. Wow. What a scripture. What a promise from Him. And that idea of fellowship has just been very strong within me that this is something that, to be honest with you, I've neglected. And I don't want to neglect it anymore. And hopefully that we'll all catch the vision that we're not separate individuals. We're together. We're bound together. And I want to have that fellowship with you. I want to have those ties strong and unbreakable. And I think they can be. Well, I've asked a couple of people to come and share. Oh, Colleen.
I don't want to interrupt your schedule.
No, go ahead.
We did get to connect with Sister Merle Thursday at the care center, and Linda warned us before we went in. She said, I hope she'll know you today. Sometimes she doesn't even know people. So we went up to the desk to see if they could tell us where she was, and they were just starting to take the people in to supper in the big room. And they said, oh, she's way over there in that corner there. We looked over, and she was waving both arms, smiling. There you are, there you are. And we went up to her. She was so thrilled and happy to see us. She just wouldn't let go, hugging and everything. And Jerry, we commented on a few things, and Jerry says, well, you look really good and happy and spry today. And she says, oh, I am. It's a perfect day. And, well, we want to make sure you know who we are, that we're not Doug and Carmen, you know. And she says, oh, Jerry. So we had a really nice visit with her, and she wanted to send her love to everybody here. She asked so many questions about what's happening, and so.
Yeah.
All the other widows around the table and other tables were watching her greet us.
Yeah. There you go.
They're staring at us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. And kind of what brings that home a little bit is that I heard a comment through some of the conversations that I've had, that this idea that nobody came. That is so important. I would hope that we could take this idea of connecting, fellowship, and go wherever God would have us go to reestablish those things that are so vital to us. And so anyway, I'm here to just bless you today. And I wanted to do something, and then I've got a couple of other things. But I wanted to do a couple of things here that almost on a regular basis. I don't want to make just a habit. I want it to be something that we can all participate in. If you're sitting next to somebody, if you would do this, that you would just take their hand. And if you're not sitting next to somebody, go sit next to somebody.
I'm not sure. Is there a time limit?
Not for a few minutes. What I would like you to do, if you'll just take their hand and just pray for them, minister to them for just a minute. Not for very long, but just take their hand and just bless them.
Just bless Jerry. Thank you.
Somebody's going to bless you right
Well,
now.
I bless you too. Thanks,
You're
dear.
doing a good job.
I appreciate that. I hope that makes you feel as good as it makes me feel. That is wonderful. I've asked a couple of people to come and share, to spread a little bit of their light and give a little bit of their light to us. And when I've been talking about, or I've been going around talking to people, one of the things that I've asked and that we've kind of talked about is letting your light so shine. Wow. And I think I've told everybody this, that we need your light. We can't get by without your light. Your light is a blessing. Your light strengthens us. Your light builds us up because Jesus is the light. And we are tabernacles of that light. And we need to give that light out. And so I want to do this on a regular basis where we're giving that light, sharing that light. And just with that. And everybody has their own distinct gifts, their own distinct talents. And you can say whatever you'd like to about that, but that's the way, a gift or a talent, something that's God's given to you. And that scripture that says, if you'll give it out, if you'll share it, not only will God just give it back to you, but it will be increased to overflowing. And that is something that I am looking for. I praise his name. I've asked two people to come and share part of their light, and we'll have Johnny come.
She was tormenting me about something, I'm not sure what it was. So, Greg came and talked to me the other day and said, well, would you share some things about your life in farming? And as I've been thinking about it, life is, to me, in respect to God in your life and what you do, there's a faith component that I've realized and that I've come to see. There's a faith, there's an understanding that how God works or how we think God works that has been interesting to me. Some of the things that have happened, and some of you here have heard the stories that I have, and that's kind of what I have is stories. We'll start with this past year, and this is a way that I see God work through the individual, and what I see is how God works in the mind of man. Because sometimes I don't understand the things that happen, and the only explanation is that God has an impact on the mind of man and how they think and what they do and the decisions they make that are outside of you, outside of your world, outside of your control, but it happens. So last fall I was in Cedar City at a technical training on the steamer, and got a call from Trent, who was he was our intermediate guy between the farm hay sales and the buyer, Bliss Dairy. He's the guy that I worked with. And I worked with him years ago with Joe Andrade, and that's where that relationship started, was with Joe Andrade. And and everybody knew that the Bliss Dairy had been struggling. We had had problems the year before. Anyway, he called me while I was down there and said, well, it's gone into receivership, which at the time I didn't even totally understand what that meant. I called Dean to get updated on that. And basically that meant that the Blisses were out, somebody else was coming in, they're in control, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And that's just how it is. Well, in this situation, I mean, we had 2014 hay sitting on the place, as well as all of 2015 hay on the place. And I know that, Trent, at a personal level, I mean, Trent felt responsible and he felt bad for the situation. And so, I mean, we did have a person there that was working on our behalf. Anyway, so he presented that our hay was good and whatever. And so they agreed to do it. But I remember at the time when he called, I mean, that was just like, what do we do now? We're in this spot now. I mean, if we lose the sale to them, this is really tough. And so I really worked, and this is where the place that God comes in our lives in relationship to just life. Because as human nature that we all have, we're going to deal with this. We're responsible. We got to deal with this. Anyway, in this instance, I really tried not to take that on, just because it was a big burden to bear in a way. And I said, I can't really take this on. And I tried to look at it in the light that this was an opportunity for God to do whatever, whoever, whatever. And so, as it turned out, the guy that was there, the receiver, was okay with what Trent recommended, that they go ahead and take our hay. But this was where God and the mind of man came into play for me. Because I think that that's how God accomplishes anything, is through man and through the mind of man. That's what's come out of this process for me. They ended up staying with us clear till the end, buying our hay. We sold everything but about 400 tons, I think. Somewhere in that neighborhood, 400 tons. Till they finally, the bank foreclosed, and I mean, everything came to a halt. They auctioned the cows, and that was it. But the amazing thing about this is that on the Bliss property were hay barns. I don't know that I went and looked at them. I don't know necessarily the quality of hay that was there, but there were hay barns full of hay on the Bliss dairy that was owned by other farmers. For the life of me to this day, I can't figure out why a receiver would want to pay freight. They ate the freight. They sent trucks here every day and picked up our hay. Why there was barns full of hay sitting on the property. And they were hoping to sell to the Bliss dairy as well. I mean, they went through a lot of hay, and in the course of a year, they would probably have used that hay. Anyway, so we did have an advocate through Trent. He, and however that relationship worked. But at the end of the day, I had to think that God somehow in this guy's mind made this okay. Because I don't know why he would do it. Anyway, sorry to get emotional. And so that's how I've thought about it, that sometimes God creates somebody to think something, see something, and there it is. So we made it through that. We made it all the way through that. Trent mentioned to a guy that he met at the sale that we still had hay to sell. He called me and basically took the rest of the hay that we had on the place. Last week we shipped the last load of feeder hay that's on the farm. So all the hay is gone. We have about There's probably still 250 tons of three-way hay here that we are actually still shipping to a guy in Delta. That contact came through Malcolm. There again, the guy was at a place of transition. He was looking for some three-way hay. I told that story about I went to Delta with a bale of hay on the truck to go show the guy, and he called me that day saying he was interested, and I had actually never called him, that I wanted to come by. And so that was another one of those things that just, said, it was just evidence that God is there in our lives and works in our lives. And we have a lot to be grateful for, I think, as a group. Because those who know me, I guess probably know marketing is not my forte. I'm really an equipment guy. Really? I'm an equipment guy. That's what I am. I like equipment. Like to make it work. Not a salesman. So there again, the evidence that God does take care of us, to me, is obvious. I wish it were that obvious. We're switching into the faith component. I wish it was that obvious in our water situation. If anybody ever gets that one figured out, please let me know. I would like to be able to pray for water and have it show up, and I haven't got that one done yet. Don't know that I ever will. So that was a thing that happened this year on the farm, and it really was an opportunity for God to do what He was going to do, and that's where we're at for this upcoming year, is to see what God's going to do. Crops look good this year. We just need favorable weather. Greg wanted me to also, just mention some of the realities, so people have this information. But if you're not aware, ag markets are pretty much tanked across the board. Everything, wheat, corn, soybeans, everything. Milk is off. So, I don't know if it'll be 50%, but it's probably going to be somewhere in there of what it was a year ago. Hay pricing is going to be way off this year. So that's just something to pray for in a market, and then pray for in quality, because now there's not a demand necessarily for hay like there was. So to make a market, I really need to compete with the commodity companies, not with farmers. So the quality needs to be really good. So pray for good weather when we're harvesting, that we can have good quality hay, because that's really the only market there is that has any demand is really high quality hay. And there again, that's because you're basically competing with the commodity companies, not other farmers. So that's just a outlook. There again, it's an opportunity for God to bless us through the upcoming year. I got one more minute. I'll do a couple other examples of faith and how God works on the mind of man. Some of you have heard this story as well. It's one that's always really stuck with me, because it required action on my part, and I did it. This was 3 years ago, I believe. 3 years ago, we were needing to upgrade our hay cutting equipment. We wanted to get another swather. And I'd been looking for a couple of months probably, just at what was out there, what was available. I'd actually been out into Nevada and looked at a couple pieces of equipment and wasn't happy with what I was looking at. The cost and the condition was poor. And I believe, if I remember right, I was driving between Bethel and here, and the thought came to me, I ought to call Kelly at Overson's in Delta, and ask him if he's got any swathers in the works coming in, used ones coming in. So I got out my phone and I called him. I thought the thought came to me. I got my phone out of my pocket and I called him. And he says, "It's funny that you should call." He says, 10 minutes ago I had two guys in here wanting to trade in an 8550S, is what I was looking for, on a new machine. He says, "It's so early," he says, "I can't tell you where we're going to be at or what's going to, if they're actually going to go through with the deal buying the new one." But it was, the point was I was there immediately. I was absolutely first in line, because it was literally within 10 minutes of these guys leaving his office. Anyway, he called me back in about a week and a half, and said these guys had gone ahead and decided to buy a new swather, and told me the deal on the swather. And I says, well, it was about $10,000 less than everything I'd been looking at. But that was somewhat conditional. He says, "I'm not going to touch it at that price." So I went and looked at the machine, and for what we do here, that worked out really well, because all of the stuff that needed to be done, we do in the shop. And so basically for him, he wrote the machine in on a piece of paper, wrote it out on a piece of paper. It didn't go, they didn't go through their shop. They didn't touch it. Came in on a truck, was unloaded. We came and loaded it up on the truck and brought it to our shop. But that was about a $10,000 savings. I guess $8,000 by the time we put $2,000 or $2,500 worth of parts in it to put it into shape. But there again, that was one of those things that I could just see that God can either impress on you or give you impressions, whatever. And a lot of times we don't want to act on that. And I still have to remind myself to act on those types of things, even though I have those kinds of things that have happened, personally in my life. And the last one was the steamer. We wouldn't have a steamer. I went to Tulare Farm Show and ran into the owner of a dealership out in Nevada who said they had a used one coming in. They were trying to sell it back in the Midwest, but there was some holdup on some pictures and this, that, and the other. But anyway, I bumped into him at the John Deere booth in Tulare, California, to find out that they had it. And so there again, it was just another one of those things. I felt like God helped bring that about. So that's what I know from farming is that there's a faith component that I still struggle with every day, is to have faith that God will bring crops and that things will work, and you have to trust, and that God works in the mind of man really in amazing ways that have been evident to me, and it's something that I've been that's been made aware to me, and because I've had the opportunity to see it and be grateful for it. So that's what I have.
As I was talking with Johnny last week, we were just kind of talking about connections a little bit again. And I may not be on a tractor. I've been on a tractor quite a bit, actually, in the past. I'm glad we got sprinkler, because I will not handle a shovel for flood irrigation anymore. I don't want to see the end of a shovel ever in that situation. I understand about gophers and what Johnny's gone through with gophers. I've done all of that stuff, but I haven't been doing it very much at all the last several years, or quite a few years. But I wanted to tell Johnny that we are apart. Johnny, you're not in the shop all by yourself. And so whenever you see Johnny, and I can see the tractors out there in the distance with the lights on, sometimes late at night. And I can see the lights out there in the tractor. So whenever you see the tractor out there, pray for Johnny. It works. And it's amazing, the things that he's just expressed, the things that happen when we're connected and when we're bearing each other's burdens. It's wonderful. Have one other, I'm going to say this before we have the next person come and share. Lois just took, how many numbers did you take, Lois? 7? She just took 7 numbers to the State Solo Region, the State Solo Ensemble Region, not region, the State Solo Festival at Orem High School. And I think it's maybe the first year that this has ever happened. Not very often, but it happened this year. Every single one of the students that went to the State Solo Festival got a 1 rating. That is impressive. And so whenever you think about Lois in the class with students, breathe a prayer for Lois. So, but all of the students were blessed. And it was just wonderful. So I asked a student to come up and share with us. So Tina.
He asked me to play you a song. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to play Malagueña. Most of you know that song, but that's what I played at State, so.
Don't you do it. Somebody else. Very fussy about that because their hands get all crinkled up when they put that lid up. And I had a teacher once stop me as I was going to play the recital, and she was very asked.
Take this out, because the mic is going to pick it up.
Set your hands out back.
Thank you, Tina. Appreciate that.
She also got a 1 on her violin solo.
Yeah, all of them did. Lois came back and kind of related some of the things that some of the judges said and things like that during the competition. And I thought it was it's kind of comical. So I'm going to pick on Dallas here for just a sec. From what Lois told me, and Tina as well, they played outstandingly beautiful. Those of you that know the piece, Dallas played a Rachmaninoff prelude in C sharp minor. And I've played that before, and that is, wow. I mean, that is, oh yeah. I think, now, correct me, Lois, if I'm wrong, but after Dallas got done playing, the people, I guess the judges, were oohing and aahing. And he started to say, well, I did. And this judge said, stop. Don't say a word. And he stopped right there. But I understand. Don't say a word. That was beautiful. And so I just am blessed when I hear about stuff like that. But more than anything else, I'm blessed the gifts and the talents and the light that we all have. We need to share it. We need to give that light out. And I just is impressed with what Johnny said about that prompting. Aren't you thankful for cell phones now? I'm thankful for cell phones. That was great. But Johnny, I get the same type of thing, promptings, but mine happened way early in the morning. I don't know why, but they happened way early in the morning. I was working on something for one of the students, and I tried to do this, I must have tried 10 or 15 times to get this thing to work, and it wouldn't work. I tried all the little tricks that I knew to do, and the computer would just say, I'm not doing this. You could see it just start to tilt and shock itself. I can't do this. And the program that I was using, it brought up this error message. We cannot do this. The error message just flashed across the screen and just would not do it. And then, early in the morning, I got a prompting, got an impression. Why don't you try this? I said, that might work. So I went the next morning. I got over there, and I was kind of excited because, if this works, that's really good. So I walked over to the school, and I set everything up and got the settings the way that the prompting was, and it worked. And I thought, wow, cool. Thanks for that. And, if you get those kind of promptings, you have to know, and I think that this is so important, that you have to know that that's the Spirit speaking. And we all have them, those promptings that come at different times. But you know that that is God speaking to you. He might speak to me in completely different ways. Hopefully, He doesn't speak to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. But that's the way it usually happens to me, way early in the morning. But because of how unique you are, God speaks to you in His own special way to you. And just as He spoke to Johnny, listen. And that's what the Spirit is saying to me over and over and over again. Don't let this go by. Listen and do what I am asking you to do. And so that is so, for me, so vitally important. So I would encourage you again to, this next week, make those connections. Listen to those promptings that we all get, that we all have, and then act on them and see what God will do. It's amazing. Amazing. Well, let's have all the superheroes and super princesses come up. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I better give you an update. Captain America is coming along. And what Britain keeps reminding me, Grandpa, how's it going? Can I come in and see? Well, it's the same as when you saw it 5 minutes ago. But sure, you can come in and see again. But Captain America's coming. And so...
It tells me that he's reminding me.
Yeah, I know it. He stopped by my yard this week and told me about it too. Is that where your grandpa's building it?
So I thought I'd better give you an update. He is on the way. Captain America is coming. So...
Early this morning, a couple of these little kids were shining their light to us when they came in. I'd like to see them shine their light when they get up there, like you said they should.
Well, oh yeah. Well, little supers, come on up.
Oh, Claire doesn't like it.
Once more. That was good. Once more. Good job, bud. Okay, let's repeat our scripture. Romans chapter 12, verse 9.
Romans chapter 12, verse 9.
Don't just pretend
Don't just pretend
To love others.
To love others.
Really love them.
Really love them.
Hate what is wrong.
Wait, what is wrong?
Hold tightly
Hold tightly.
to what is good.
What is good?
There you go. So now that you're all standing, let's repeat that. Romans chapter 12, verse 9. Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. You can be excused.